On October 28th, 2020, my son and I decided to head out into the Cheaha wilderness to hike the Pinhoti Trail. We had absolutely no idea what we were walking into. Our plan was to hike a loop starting at the Cheaha Wilderness Trailhead, go across the Pinhoti, and then back up the Cave Creek Trail. This is all part of the Talladega National Forest. We knew there was weather coming in, but we really had no idea how bad it was going to get. The trail that morning was cool and misty, and we had a great time. It was a beautiful place to be. One of the things we weren't really prepared for was just how rocky the trail was as we went along the ridge. We'd break through and have these what would have been beautiful vistas if the mist hadn't been so heavy in the valley. But it was still an eerie and wonderful place to be, as long as you didn't crash your toe into another big rock.
Dad, let out a little yell.
No!
Woo! I say bye.
Bye!
As we hiked across the cutoff trail to the McDill Overlook, we passed the wreckage of a small plane that crashed in 2003. A student pilot and his instructor were trying to get into Gadsden, Alabama because the weather had turned bad and the ceiling grew low. They had lost visibility. Obviously, they didn't make it and crashed into the tree line. Both men were killed. It was kind of a grim reminder that weather can be treacherous. But about that time, the mist lifted out of the valley, and it was a beautiful view. After collecting some water at McDill, we headed back and started looking for the Cave Creek cutoff. The last mile was just treacherous and difficult. It was basically boulder to boulder. The last half mile was particularly grueling. The video we have doesn't adequately show just how difficult that terrain was. And by the time we got up the cutoff and to the top of the ridge again, we were both exhausted and ready to stop. We set up camp in the shelter of some rocks and tried to eat. Everything was wet, but we decided to go ahead and crash out around 5 o'clock in the evening, figuring we'd be up at daybreak, break camp, and head on back up the creek trail. So it was around midnight, after we had tried to get some sleep after a grueling day hiking across the rocks, that we realized that the tent was flooding. Now, actually, we were in a good position as far as the wind went. We really weren't feeling that. The tent wasn't moving. We could hear it, but we were fine. But when we got to have about an inch of water in the bottom of the tent, we realized that we were in trouble. So it was at that point that Chris said, Dad, we're not going to get any drier, and I don't think I'm going to sleep anymore tonight. So what do you think about just packing up and getting out of here? And so around midnight, we got up and we packed our backpacks up, and we pulled the tent down, got everything going, and grabbed our flashlights and took off down across the cutoff trail to the Cave Creek Trail, which neither of us had ever hiked before, and started trying to follow the blazes down. By this time, Hurricane Zeta had hit full force in the area that we were in. So we had probably 50, 60 mile an hour winds, driving rain, and the creek was flooded. We didn't realize that we actually had to cross that creek 3 times. And so we were crossing through the flash flood multiple times. And there were several places as we hiked along that the water was just flowing down the side of the mountain and flooding the trail out. So we were walking in standing water most of the time. So between the rocks and the water, we had a great adventure. We were about 3.5, 4 miles away from the car when we headed out at midnight, and we hiked as hard as I could. Chris would have gone faster, but I'm old. And there was a couple of times where I was about ready to just kind of stop and rest for a minute, and then we would hear a tree snap and fall over right around us, and the adrenaline would turn on, and we would keep going. Several times we lost the trail. Again, it's not blazed very well. We got out, and we would kind of be standing around trying to figure out where to go. And but God was good, and we managed to stay on it. Luckily, my phone had just enough battery left to run the app so that we could make sure we were on the trail as we were hiking out. And finally, we hit the power lines and knew we were almost back to the car. And we burst out and to the entrance there and made it to the car in time to strip off all of our wet clothes and put on the only dry things we had, which were 2 T-shirts and a pair of underwear each. And which is why when we got home, the first thing my wife asked was, "Where are your pants?" Hey, there are not many better stories than that.
Wow. What a man.
Once we got onto the road trying to get home, we realized just how bad the storm had been. There was debris everywhere, tree limbs all over the place, and there we were in our T-shirts and underwear, fighting with things, trying to get home. At one point, the road was completely blocked by a fallen tree, so we had to recalculate, drive through the wilderness of Alabama, and finally make it to I-20 where we got home around 6 o'clock in the morning. And truly, the first words out of my wife's mouth were, "Where are your pants?" Looking back on it, it was a great adventure. I've not laughed so much in a very long time. And it was one of those things that I am so glad that I did, and I never, ever, ever want to do again. That's what adventures are all about.